The vast emptiness of space had always fascinated Dr. Ilara Chen. As she gazed out of the observatory's reinforced windows at the twinkling stars, she couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary was about to happen. Little did she know that her intuition was about to be proven right in the most spectacular way imaginable. Ilara's reverie was broken by an urgent beep from her console. Frowning, she turned to the array of screens and holographic displays that surrounded her workstation. Her eyes widened as she processed the information scrolling across the monitors. "This can't be right," she muttered, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she double-checked the readings. But there was no mistake. The Deep Space Monitoring Array had picked up an artificial signal, one that definitely wasn't from Earth. Heart-pounding, Ilara initiated the first contact protocols that had been gathering dust for decades. Within minutes, the observatory was a hive of activity as scientists and government officials poured in, all struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what was happening. As the leading xenolinguist on the project, Ilara found herself at the center of the storm. For weeks, she worked tirelessly, decoding the alien message bit by bit. The signal was complex, layered with information that hinted at a level of technology far beyond humanity's current capabilities. Finally, after countless sleepless nights and more coffee than any human should consume, Ilara cracked the code. As the message revealed itself, she felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just a greeting from the stars. It was a desperate plea for help. The message painted a grim picture of a galaxy in turmoil. An expansionist empire known as the Hegemony was sweeping across the stars, conquering and subjugating every civilization in its path. The signal's creators, a species calling themselves the Zephyrians, were on the brink of annihilation. They had sent out this message as a last, desperate attempt to find allies in their fight against the Hegemony. As Ilara presented her findings to the United Earth Council, she could see the shock and fear in the eyes of the world's leaders. Humanity had barely taken its first steps into the solar system, and now they were faced with a threat of galactic proportions. "We can't just ignore this," Ilara argued passionately. "The Zephyrians have provided us with coordinates and technical specifications. They're offering to share their technology if we help them. This could be our only chance to prepare ourselves before the Hegemony reaches Earth." The debate raged for days. Some argued for isolation, believing that drawing attention to Earth would only hasten its doom. Others, like Ilara, pushed for immediate action. In the end, the decision was made. Humanity would answer the call. The following months were a whirlwind of activity. Using the specifications provided by the Zephyrians, Earth's brightest minds worked around the clock to construct humanity's first faster-than-light capable ship. They called it the Nexus, a fitting name for the vessel that would bridge the gap between Earth and the greater galactic community. As the Nexus neared completion, the task of selecting its crew began. Ilara, given her crucial role in decoding the message, was an obvious choice to lead the scientific team. The military arm of the mission was headed by Colonel Marcus Donovan, a decorated veteran known for his strategic brilliance and adaptability. The rest of the crew was just as impressive. There was Dr. Kira Yoshida, a prodigy in xenobiology, eager to study the physiology of alien life forms. Engineer Santiago Reyes brought his expertise in cutting-edge propulsion systems, essential for managing the experimental FTL drive. Security specialist Zara Okafor rounded out the team, her enhanced reflexes and combat training a last line of defense in unknown territory. As the day of launch approached, Ilara found herself standing before the Nexus, marveling at the sleek lines of the ship that would carry them across the stars. It was a testament to human ingenuity, a craft built in months that should have taken decades to develop. The night before the launch, Ilara couldn't sleep. She stood on the observation deck of the space station, watching Earth slowly rotate below. The beauty of her home planet brought tears to her eyes as she contemplated the enormity of what they were about to undertake. "Quite a view, isn't it?" a voice said behind her. Ilara turned to see Colonel Donovan, his usually stern face softened by the spectacular vista. "It's breathtaking," Ilara replied. "I can't help but wonder if we'll ever see it again." Donovan nodded, understanding in his eyes. "It's natural to be afraid, Doctor. We're leaping into the unknown. But remember why we're doing this. If we succeed, we're not just saving Earth. We're saving countless worlds from tyranny." Ilara squared her shoulders, drawing strength from the Colonel's words. "You're right. Whatever happens out there, we're making history. For better or worse, nothing will ever be the same after this." The next morning, as Ilara strapped herself into her seat on the Nexus's bridge, she felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. The countdown echoed through the ship, each number bringing them closer to the moment of truth. 3, 2, 1. Ignition. The Nexus shuddered as its engines roared to life. G-forces pressed Ilara back into her seat as the ship broke free from Earth's gravity. Through the viewscreen, she watched her home planet grow smaller and smaller until it was just another blue marble in the vast expanse of space. As they cleared the solar system, Colonel Donovan gave the order they had all been waiting for: initiate FTL drive. Engineer Ray's fingers danced across his console. FTL drive charging. All systems nominal. Ready for jump in 3, 2, 1. The stars outside stretched into lines of light, and with a flash that seemed to bend reality itself, the Nexus leaped into faster-than-light travel. Ilara felt a moment of disorientation as the laws of physics she had known all her life were defied. As the crew adjusted to the sensation of FTL travel, Ilara couldn't help but smile. They had done it. Humanity had taken its first real step into the cosmic ocean, but her elation was tempered by the knowledge of what awaited them at their destination. Over the next few weeks, as the Nexus hurtled through space towards the Zephyrian system, the crew trained and prepared for every possible scenario they could imagine. Ilara spent countless hours with her team, studying the additional information the Zephyrians had included in their message, trying to learn as much as she could about their potential allies and the threat they faced. The hegemony, it seemed, was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. A collective of multiple species bound together by a ruthless ideology of expansion and domination. They saw the subjugation of lesser races as their cosmic right. Their technology was as advanced as their methods were brutal, employing everything from planet-cracking weapons to insidious mind control techniques. As Ilara delved deeper into the data, she began to understand the true scale of the conflict they were about to enter. This wasn't just about saving the Zephyrians. The entire galaxy was at stake. If the hegemony wasn't stopped, it was only a matter of time before they set their sights on Earth. The gravity of their mission weighed heavily on the crew. During meals and off-duty hours, conversations often turned to what they had left behind and the uncertain future that lay ahead. Yet despite the fear and doubt, there was also a sense of purpose that united them. They were humanity's first ambassadors to the stars, carrying with them the hopes and dreams of their entire species. As they approached the end of their journey, Colonel Donovan called the senior staff together for a final briefing. "We're about to face challenges unlike anything we've encountered before," he said, his voice steady and determined. "But remember this, we carry with us the best of humanity. Our adaptability, our creativity, our unwavering spirit. No matter what awaits us in the Zephyrian system, we will face it together." Ilara looked around at her crewmates, seeing the same mix of fear and determination in their eyes that she felt in her heart. They were an unlikely group of pioneers, thrust into a conflict beyond their imagination. But as she met the resolute gazes of her companions, Ilara felt a surge of hope. The final hours of their journey were tense with anticipation. As they dropped out of FTL on the outskirts of the Zephyrian system, the bridge fell silent. On the view screen, a breathtaking sight unfolded: a binary star system, its twin suns casting an ethereal glow over a series of planets in various hues of blue and green. But the beauty of the scene was marred by clear signs of conflict. The wreckage of ships drifted in the space between planets, and even from a distance, they could see the scars of battle on the closest worlds. "We're being hailed," announced the communications officer, her voice tight with tension. Colonel Donovan nodded to Ilara. This was the moment they had prepared for. With a deep breath, Ilara stepped forward. "Open a channel," she said. The view screen flickered, and for the first time, humanity came face to face with an alien intelligence. The Zephyrian that appeared was both familiar and utterly alien, humanoid in overall shape, but with iridescent skin that seemed to shimmer with bioluminescence. Its large, compound eyes regarded the Nexus crew with an expression that even Ilara, with all her training, found difficult to read. "Greetings, beings of Earth," the Zephyrian said, its voice a melodious trill that the ship's translators rendered into English. "We had almost lost hope that anyone would answer our call. You have arrived just in time. The hegemony's forces approach. Will you stand with us in the coming storm?" Ilara glanced at Colonel Donovan, who gave her a firm nod. Turning back to the screen, she spoke the words that would change the course of human history forever. "We stand with you," Ilara said, her voice unwavering. "Humanity is ready to join the fight for freedom in the galaxy." As the Zephyrian's features shifted in what Ilara hoped was an expression of relief and gratitude, alarms suddenly blared throughout the Nexus. The tactical officer's voice cut through the moment of connection. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL. Energy signatures matched the hegemony profiles provided by the Zephyrians. The view screen split, showing the approaching hegemony fleet, a terrifying armada of sleek, predatory ships that dwarfed the Nexus in both size and number. Colonel Donovan's voice rang out, calm despite the dire situation. "Battle stations. All hands prepare for combat." As the crew of the Nexus scrambled to their positions, Ilara realized that their true test was just beginning. Humanity's first interstellar mission had become a baptism by fire, and the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy now rested on their shoulders. The Nexus turned to face the oncoming hegemony fleet, humanity's resolve about to be tested in the crucible of interstellar war. The battle for the future of the galaxy was about to begin. The bridge of the Nexus erupted into a flurry of activity as the hegemony fleet bore down on them. Colonel Donovan's voice cut through the chaos, steady and commanding. "Evasive maneuvers. Reyes, get us behind that moon. Okafor, charge weapons but hold fire." As Santiago Reyes expertly piloted the Nexus behind one of the Zephyrian system's moons, Dr. Ilara Chen's mind raced. This was supposed to be a diplomatic mission, not a battle. She turned to the view screen, where the Zephyrian representative still watched, its bioluminescent skin pulsing with what she interpreted as anxiety. "We need to get to your homeworld," Ilara said urgently. "Can you provide us with coordinates and any defense protocols?" The Zephyrian's compound eyes flickered in a pattern that the translation software interpreted as agreement. "Sending data now. But be warned, our defenses are faltering. We've held out for months, but each attack leaves us weaker." As the data streamed in, Kira Yoshida, the xenobiologist, gasped. "These readings, the Zephyrian atmosphere is highly corrosive to most carbon-based life forms. How are we supposed to help them on the ground?" Ilara's mind whirled with possibilities. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, let's focus on getting there in one piece." The Nexus shuddered as a stray shot from the hegemony fleet grazed their shields. Colonel Donovan gritted his teeth. "We can't stay here forever. Reyes, plot a course to the Zephyrian homeworld. Okafor, be ready with those weapons. We're going to have to fight our way through." As they emerged from behind the moon, the full might of the hegemony fleet came into view. Dozens of ships, each bristling with weapons, formed a blockade between the Nexus and their destination. "This is suicide," muttered Zara Okafor, her hands hovering over the weapons controls. "Maybe not," Ilara interjected, an idea forming. "The Zephyrians provided us with their communication frequencies. If we broadcast on all of them, maybe we can rally any resistance forces in the system." Colonel Donovan nodded sharply. "Do it." Ilara's fingers flew over the console as she composed a message, her voice ringing out across the frequencies. "Attention all free beings of the Zephyrian system. This is the Earth Ship Nexus. We've come in response to the Zephyrians' call for aid. If you stand against the hegemony, now is the time to fight. Together, we can break their blockade." For a moment, there was silence. Then, like stars blinking into existence, ships began to appear on their sensors. They were a motley crew, vessels of various sizes and designs, clearly cobbled together from whatever could be salvaged. But they were ships with guns, and more importantly, ships with people willing to fight. A gravelly voice crackled over the comms. "Well, well. The Zephyrians' distress call actually worked. I'm Captain Krall of the Free Traders Alliance. We've been running interference against the hegemony for months. Didn't expect reinforcements to come from beyond the stars, though." As more ships joined their impromptu fleet, Ilara felt a surge of hope. This ragtag group might just have a chance. Colonel Donovan took charge, coordinating with Captain Krall and the other resistance leaders. The plan was simple but daring. Create a diversion to draw off part of the hegemony fleet while the Nexus and a small escort broke through to the Zephyrian homeworld. What followed was a battle unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. The void of space lit up with weapons fire, shields flaring as they absorbed devastating blows. The Nexus shuddered and groaned, systems flickering as Rise pushed the ship to its limits. Through it all, Ilara and her team worked feverishly, analyzing hegemony communication patterns, looking for weaknesses to exploit. It was Kira who made the breakthrough. "They're ship-to-ship communications," she exclaimed. "They're using a type of quantum entanglement, but it's vulnerable to targeted tachyon bursts. We could disrupt their entire command structure." With this new information, the tide of battle began to turn. As the hegemony ships fell into disarray, the Nexus and its escorts seized the opportunity, punching through the weakened blockade. The Zephyrian homeworld loomed before them, a swirling mass of purples and greens, but there was no time to admire the view. Hegemony ground forces had already begun their invasion. As they entered the atmosphere, the true challenge of their mission became apparent. Warning klaxons blared as the ship's external sensors registered the corrosive atmosphere. "Hull integrity at 95% and dropping," Rise reported, his voice tense. "We can't stay here long." Ilara's mind raced. How could they help the Zephyrians if they couldn't even breathe the same air? Then an idea struck her. "The environmental suits we brought for extravehicular activity. Can we modify them to withstand this atmosphere?" Kira's eyes lit up. "If we recalibrate the filtration systems and reinforce the outer layer with a nanopolymer coating, it might just work. But it'll take time." "Time we don't have," Colonel Donovan growled, watching as hegemony dropships descended towards the Zephyrian capital. It was Santiago Reyes who provided the solution. "What if we don't land? The Nexus has a hover capability for low-gravity environments. We could use it here, stay above the worst of the atmosphere, and deploy strike teams with the modified suits." The plan was risky, but it was their only option. As Kira and her team worked to modify the suits, the Nexus took up a position above the Zephyrian capital. From their vantage point, they could see the desperate battle unfolding below. The Zephyrians, with their advanced technology but fragile physiology, were no match for the hegemony's brute force tactics. Finally, the suits were ready. Colonel Donovan turned to Ilara. "Dr. Chen, I know you're not military, but we need every able body for this. Are you up for some field work?" Ilara swallowed hard but nodded. She hadn't come all this way to sit on the sidelines. As they prepared to deploy, Captain Krall's voice came over the comms again. "Looks like you folks could use some help groundside. My crew and I are coming in. We got some scores to settle with the hegemony." The Joint Strike Force, humans, free traders, and other resistance aliens, deployed from the Nexus in a daring drop. As Ilara fell through the alien sky, the battle raging below, she felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. This was far beyond anything she had trained for, but the fate of not just the Zephyrians, but potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. They landed in the heart of the Zephyrian capital, a sprawling metropolis of crystalline spires and pulsating energy conduits. The hegemony forces, not expecting an attack from above, were momentarily thrown into confusion. Ilara found herself fighting alongside beings she had never imagined. Captain Krull, a grizzled four-armed veteran who wielded twin plasma rifles with deadly accuracy. A serpentine alien named Shalira whose venomous spit could melt through hegemony armor. And a hovering, gelatinous creature called Blob, a name given by the human troops, that could absorb and redirect energy weapons. As they pushed towards the Zephyrian Central Command, Ilara's scientific mind was in overdrive. She marveled at the Zephyrians' organic technology, the way their buildings seemed to pulse and react to the battle around them. But there was no time for detailed study. The hegemony was regrouping, bringing in heavy weaponry that threatened to overwhelm them. Just when it seemed they might be forced to retreat, help arrived from an unexpected quarter. The sky darkened as a massive shape descended, a Zephyrian battle platform, long thought destroyed. At the controls was a young Zephyrian, their bioluminescence flickering with determination. "I am Zolteth," the Zephyrian announced over a general frequency. "Last scion of the High Council, I apologize for our late arrival. Resurrecting our ancient weapons took longer than anticipated." With the battle platform's support, the tide turned. The hegemony forces, caught between the ground assault and the aerial bombardment, began to falter. Ilara and the strike team fought their way into the central command structure, securing it room by room. As the last hegemony trooper fell, a strange silence descended. Ilara looked around at her unlikely comrades, humans, free traders, resistance aliens, and Zephyrians, all standing together in victory. Zolteth approached Ilara, their compound eyes studying her with intense curiosity. "You came," they said simply, their voice filled with wonder. "When we sent out that message, we dared not hope for a response, let alone this." Ilara smiled, despite her exhaustion. "Earth stands with those who fight for freedom. But this is just the beginning, isn't it?" Zolteth's skin rippled in what Ilara was beginning to recognize as a Zephyrian nod. "Indeed, the hegemony will return with greater numbers. This victory has bought us time, but we must use it wisely." Captain Krull, cleaning his weapons nearby, chimed in. "The kid's right. I've been fighting these bastards across 3 sectors. They don't take defeat well. We've stirred up the hornet's nest now." Colonel Donovan, who had been coordinating with the Nexus, joined the conversation. "Then we need to make the most of this opportunity. Dr. Chen, you're the diplomat here. What do you suggest?" Ilara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "We form an alliance," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Not just between Earth and the Zephyrians, but with everyone here. The free traders, the resistance, anyone who stands against the hegemony. We pool our knowledge, our resources, our strength." She turned to Zolteth. "The Zephyrians have advanced technology we can't even begin to understand. Earth has a fresh perspective and a history of innovative problem-solving. Captain Krull and the others know the hegemony, their tactics, their weaknesses. Together, we might stand a chance." There was a moment of silence as her words sank in. Then, one by one, nods of agreement rippled through the assembled group. Zolteth's skin glowed brightly. "An alliance of outcasts," they mused, "fighting for a free galaxy. It is more than we dared hope for when we sent our message into the void." Captain Krull grunted in agreement. "Been running from these tyrants for too long. About time we took the fight to them." As plans began to form and ideas were exchanged, Ilara felt a surge of optimism. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with danger and uncertainty. The hegemony was still out there, no doubt already planning their retaliation, But looking around at this diverse group of beings, united in purpose, she knew they had a fighting chance. The battle for the Zephyrian homeworld was over, but the war for the galaxy had just begun. As the first streams of data began to flow, Zephyrian tech specs, Earth's historical archives, the free trader's star charts, Ilara realized that this is what she had always dreamed of. Not just first contact, but true collaboration between species, working together to forge a better future. The Nexus, still hovering protectively above the Zephyrian capital, stood as a symbol of this new alliance. It had brought them together, and now it would serve as the flagship for their cause. As the immediate danger passed and the work of building their alliance began, Ilara found a quiet moment to send a message back to Earth. Looking at the strange, beautiful world around her, she composed her report. To the United Earth Council, first contact mission successful. Situation more complex than anticipated. Earth now part of galactic conflict, but also part of a new hope. Transmitting full details shortly. Recommend immediate preparation for potential hegemony threat, but also prepare for a new era of interstellar cooperation. The galaxy is vaster, more wondrous, and more perilous than we ever imagined, and humanity is ready to take its place among the stars. As she sent the message, Ilara knew that nothing would ever be the same. The adventure that had begun with a mysterious signal had become a quest to save the galaxy, and somehow, improbably, humanity was at the center of it all. The alliance of outcasts had been born. Now they just had to make sure it survived long enough to challenge the hegemony's iron grip on the galaxy. Into the heart of darkness. The weeks following the Battle of Zephyria were a whirlwind of activity. The newly formed alliance of outcasts worked tirelessly to fortify their position and prepare for the inevitable hegemony counterattack. The Nexus, once a symbol of Earth's first steps into the galactic community, had become the nerve center of a burgeoning resistance movement. Dr. Ilara Chen found herself at the heart of it all, her role evolving from xenolinguist to de facto ambassador of Earth. Her days were filled with strategy meetings, technology exchanges, and the monumental task of bridging the gaps between vastly different species and cultures. One morning, as she pored over Zephyrian data crystals in her makeshift office aboard the Nexus, Colonel Donovan entered, his face grim. "We've got a problem," he said without preamble. "Our long-range scouts have detected unusual activity in the hegemony-controlled Ceresian Nebula. Whatever they're working on, it's big." Ilara frowned. "Define big." "Big enough to potentially turn the tide of the war in their favor," Donovan replied, his voice low. "We need more information, but getting close enough to gather intel would be nearly impossible." A thoughtful expression crossed Ilara's face. "Maybe not impossible. Remember those stealth prototypes the Zephyrians were working on?" Donovan nodded slowly, catching on. "You think we could use them for a covert operation?" "It's worth a shot," Ilara said. "Let's call a meeting with the Alliance leadership." Hours later, the command center of the Nexus was filled with an eclectic group of beings. Zolteth's bioluminescence pulsed with anticipation, while Captain Crow lounged in a specially designed chair, his 4 arms crossed skeptically. Other Alliance members, the serpentine Shalira, the gelatinous blob, and representatives from a dozen other species, gathered around the holographic display. Ilara laid out the situation and their proposed plan. "We believe the hegemony is developing a new weapon or technology in the Ceresian Nebula. We need to find out what it is, and, if possible, sabotage their efforts. The Zephyrian stealth tech gives us a chance to slip past their defenses." Zalteth's skin rippled with concern. "The prototypes are untested in actual combat situations. It would be extremely risky." "Everything we do is risky," Captain Crow growled. "At least this plan has a chance of giving us an edge." After much debate, a decision was reached. A small team would infiltrate the hegemony facility using a modified shuttle equipped with the Zephyrian stealth technology. The team would consist of Ilara, Colonel Donovan, Zara Okafor for security, Kira Yoshida for her expertise in xenobiology, and Shalira, whose natural abilities could prove invaluable in close-quarters infiltration. As they made final preparations, Ilara couldn't shake a feeling of unease. This mission would take them into the very heart of enemy territory, with only experimental technology protecting them from discovery. The day of the mission arrived all too soon. As the team boarded the modified shuttle, now christened the Shadow Dancer, Ilara took one last look at the Nexus. She couldn't help but wonder if she would ever see it again. The journey to the Ceresian Nebula was tense. Even with the stealth systems engaged, they knew that one wrong move could give them away. As they approached the nebula's swirling gases, the true scale of the hegemony's operation became clear. By the void, Shalira hissed, her forked tongue flicking in agitation. It's an entire fleet. Hidden within the nebula's colorful clouds was a massive hegemony staging area. Dozens of warships surrounded a central structure, a space station of enormous proportions. Colonel Donovan's jaw tightened. That's not just a research facility. It's a forward operating base. They're preparing for a major offensive. Using the nebula's electromagnetic interference to further mask their approach, the Shadow Dancer slipped past the hegemony's outer defenses. They located a rarely used maintenance airlock and began their infiltration. Once inside, the team split up. Donovan and Okafor headed for the command center, hoping to access the main computer systems. Ilara, Kira, and Shalira made their way towards the research labs, determined to uncover the nature of the hegemony's secret project. As they crept through the station's winding corridors, Ilara was struck by the oppressive atmosphere. Everything was utilitarian, designed for maximum efficiency, with no regard for comfort or aesthetics. It was a stark contrast to the organic, flowing designs of the Zephyrians, or the practical but personalized spaces of the Nexus. They'd reached the main laboratory complex, using stolen access codes to slip inside. What they found chilled Ilara to her core. Row upon row of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing a different alien species. Kira gasped as she examined the nearest pod. These beings, they're being systematically altered at the genetic level. It's like they're trying to create some kind of super soldiers. Shalira's scales rattled in disgust. Abominations. The hegemony seeks to twist life itself to serve their purposes. Ilara's mind raced as she tried to comprehend the implications. This goes beyond simple conquest. They're trying to remake the galaxy in their image. As Kira worked to download the research data, Ilara's communicator crackled to life. Colonel Donovan's voice came through, tense and urgent. We've been compromised. Security teams are sweeping the station. Get what you can and head for the extraction point. Ilara's heart pounded as they raced through the station, alarms blaring around them. They were almost to the rendezvous point when a squad of hegemony troops cut them off. Shalira sprang into action, her venomous spit melting through the soldiers' armor as Zora provided covering fire. They fought their way to the Shadow Dancer, but as they prepared to disengage from the airlock, a terrible realization struck. The hegemony had detected their shuttle. The stealth systems are failing, Donovan growled, his hands flying over the controls. We'll be sitting ducks out there. It was Kira who provided the solution. The nebula, she said, her eyes wide with inspiration. If we can make it to the denser parts, the electromagnetic interference might hide us long enough to escape. What followed was the most harrowing flight of Ilara's life. The Shadow Dancer weaved through the nebula's swirling gases, hegemony fighters in hot pursuit. Energy weapons lit up the colorful clouds around them as Donovan pushed the shuttle to its limits. Just when it seemed they might make it, a lucky shot from a hegemony cruiser clipped their wing. The Shadow Dancer spun out of control, alarms blaring as they plummeted deeper into the nebula. Brace for impact, Donovan shouted as they hurtled towards a small, uncharted planetoid hidden within the nebula's depths. The crash landing was violent, the Shadow Dancer skidding across the planetoid's rocky surface before coming to a rest in a deep crater. As the dust settled, Ilara took stock of their situation. They were alive, but the shuttle was badly damaged. Status report, Donovan coughed, pulling himself from the wreckage. Celira's unconscious but alive. Kira reported, checking on their alien companion. Zara's got a broken arm, but she's mobile. Ilara looked at the shattered remains of their shuttle, then up at the swirling nebula above. They'll be searching for us. We need to find cover and assess our options. As they made their way across the alien landscape, seeking shelter in a nearby cave system, Ilara's mind whirled with the implications of what they had discovered. The hegemony's plans were more horrifying than they could have imagined. If they couldn't get this information back to the Alliance, countless lives would be at risk. But first, they had to survive. Stranded on an unknown world, pursued by an overwhelming enemy force, their mission had become a desperate fight for survival. As Ilara helped Kira tend to their wounded, she couldn't help but wonder, had they just stumbled upon the key to defeating the hegemony, or had they doomed themselves and the Alliance with their daring gambit? The cave's darkness enveloped them, punctuated only by the faint glow of their emergency lights. The sound of distant explosions told them the hegemony hadn't given up the search. Ilara knew that their next moves would determine not just their fate, but potentially the fate of the entire galaxy. As they huddled in the cave, tending to their wounds and trying to salvage what they could from their equipment, a grim reality set in. They were trapped behind enemy lines, cut off from the Alliance, with information that could change the course of the war. Their only hope was to find a way off this desolate rock and back to friendly space. Donovan, ever the tactician, was already formulating a plan. The hegemony will have patrols searching the surface. We need to stay hidden, assess our resources, and look for an opportunity to commandeer one of their ships. Kira, who had been examining some of the cave's unusual mineral formations, suddenly gasped. These crystals, they're similar to the ones we saw in the Zephyrian databanks. If I'm right, they could be used to boost our comm signals. We might be able to get a message out to the Alliance. A spark of hope ignited in Ilara's chest. If they could alert the Alliance to their location and the hegemony's plans, they might have a chance. But it was a race against time. Every moment they spent on this planetoid increased the risk of discovery. As Kira and Zara worked on modifying their damaged communicator with the crystal components, Ilara and Donovan ventured to the cave's entrance to keep watch. The nebula's gases cast an eerie, shifting light across the barren landscape. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Ilara asked softly, the weight of their situation pressing down on her. "Coming out here, risking everything." Donovan was quiet for a moment before responding. "In my experience, the right thing and the easy thing are rarely the same. We've uncovered a threat that could doom countless civilizations. Whatever happens to us, that knowledge gives the Alliance a fighting chance." Their conversation was interrupted by an excited call from Kira. "I think we've got it. The signal's weak, but it should penetrate the nebula's interference." They gathered around the jury-rigged communicator, hearts pounding as Ilara composed a message. It had to be short, encoded, and contained the crucial information about the hegemony's genetic experiments. Just as she was about to transmit, the cave shook with a nearby explosion. Hegemony forces had found them. "Send it now," Donovan shouted, drawing his weapon. Ilara's finger hit the transmit button as the first hegemony soldiers appeared at the cave's entrance. What followed was a desperate battle, with the team fighting to buy time for their message to get through. Celira, now conscious but weakened, used the last of her venom to create a toxic cloud, slowing the hegemony's advance. Zara, despite her injured arm, provided precision fire that kept the enemy at bay. Donovan coordinated their defense, his tactical genius shining even in this dire situation. As the battle raged, Ilara found herself in the thick of the fight, using skills she never thought she'd need. Her scientific mind analyzed patterns in the hegemony's attacks, allowing her to predict and counter their moves. Just when it seemed they would be overwhelmed, the cave was rocked by a massive explosion from outside. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, A familiar voice crackled over their comm system. "This is Captain Krell of the free trader ship Starblade. You folks look like you could use a ride." Relief washed over Ilara as she realized their message had gotten through. The Alliance had come for them. The next few minutes were a blur of action as they fought their way out of the cave and onto Krell's ship. As they broke atmosphere, they saw the full extent of the rescue mission. A small but determined Alliance fleet was engaging the hegemony forces, buying them time to escape. As the Starblade jumped to light speed, leaving the Ceregian Nebula behind, Ilara finally allowed herself to breathe. They had done it. They had uncovered the hegemony's plans and lived to tell the tale. But as she looked at her battered teammates, at the determination in their eyes, she knew this was just the beginning. The information they had gathered would change the nature of the war. The Alliance now knew the full extent of the threat they faced. As they sped back towards friendly space, Ilara began composing her report in her head. The Alliance would need to be prepared for what was coming. The hegemony's genetic experiments, their massive military buildup, it all pointed to a coming storm that would engulf the galaxy. But looking around at the diverse crew of the Starblade, at the fleet that had risked everything to save them, Ilara felt a surge of hope. They had seen the heart of darkness, glimpsed the hegemony's terrifying vision for the future. But they had also seen the strength that came from unity, from different species standing together against tyranny. The real war was just beginning. But thanks to their mission, the Alliance of Outcasts would face it with open eyes and united hearts. As the stars streaked by outside the ship's viewport, Ilara allowed herself a small smile. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew that humanity and its allies would face them together. The Nexus Protocol, their mission to uncover the truth and unite against the hegemony, had only just begun. The Nexus Protocol. The return of Ilara and her team to Alliance space was met with a mix of relief and grim determination. The information they had gathered about the hegemony's genetic experiments and military buildup sent shockwaves through the coalition. It was clear that they needed a game-changing strategy to counter this existential threat. In the days that followed, Ilara found herself in endless strategy sessions with the Alliance leadership. The Zephyrians, the free traders, and representatives from a dozen other species all brought their unique perspectives to the table. But it was during a late-night brainstorming session with Dr. Kira Yoshida that the spark of an idea formed. What if, Ilara mused, her eyes bright with inspiration, we could turn the hegemony's own research against them? Kira leaned in, intrigued. Go on. Their genetic experiments are aimed at creating the perfect soldiers, right? But what if we could create something different? A way to unite all our species on a fundamental level. The idea quickly took shape, evolving into what they called the Nexus Protocol. It was audacious, ethically complex, and incredibly risky. The plan involved using a modified version of the hegemony's genetic technology to create a psychic link between volunteer representatives of each Alliance species. This link would allow for unprecedented levels of communication and cooperation, potentially giving them the edge they needed against the hegemony's superior numbers and technology. The debate over the Nexus Protocol was fierce. Many saw it as their only hope, while others feared it could be just as dangerous as the threat they faced. Ilara found herself at the center of the storm, advocating for the plan she helped conceive. I understand the risks, she argued during a crucial Alliance Council meeting. But the hegemony is on the verge of unleashing something that could enslave the entire galaxy. We need to take bold action. In the end, the decision was made. The Nexus Protocol would go forward, with Ilara leading the research team. As they worked tirelessly to bring the protocol to fruition, alarming reports began to pour in. The hegemony was on the move, their newly enhanced forces cutting a swath through Alliance space. The race against time had begun in earnest. Weeks turned into months as Ilara and her team pushed the boundaries of science and ethics. The first trials of the Nexus Protocol showed promise, but also revealed the immense strain it put on the participants' minds and bodies. Just as they were on the verge of a breakthrough, disaster struck. A massive hegemony fleet, led by their new genetically enhanced commanders, launched a surprise attack on the Alliance's main base. As klaxons blared and ships scrambled to defend, Ilara knew that their time had run out. The Nexus protocol was still untested on a large scale, but it was now or never. As the battle raged in space above them, Ilara and her team prepared to implement the protocol, knowing that the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. As the first volunteers were connected to the Nexus, Ilara closed her eyes and hoped that their desperate gambit would be enough to turn the tide. The future of not just humanity, but all free species in the galaxy, now rested on the success of the Nexus protocol. Humanity's finest hour. The implementation of the Nexus protocol was like nothing Ilara had ever experienced. As the psychic link activated, connecting the minds of volunteers from every Alliance species, she felt a rush of sensations and emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. In orbit above, the battle raged. The hegemony's enhanced forces pressed their advantage, their ships cutting through the Alliance's defenses. But as the Nexus protocol took hold, something extraordinary began to happen. The linked minds of the Alliance forces began to work in perfect harmony. Tactical decisions that would have taken minutes happened in split seconds. Ships maneuvered with uncanny precision, responding to threats almost before they appeared. Ilara, at the heart of the Nexus, felt the tide turning. The hegemony's advantage in raw power was being countered by the Alliance's unprecedented level of coordination and strategic thinking. But the strain on the linked minds was immense. Ilara could feel the pain and exhaustion of every connected individual. They were burning bright, but she knew they couldn't maintain this level of connection for long. Just when it seemed they might buckle under the pressure, a message came through the Nexus. The Zephyrians had managed to isolate the command signals controlling the hegemony's enhanced soldiers. With their combined mental strength, the Alliance launched a concentrated attack on the hegemony's flagship. The resulting explosion seemed to light up the entire system. As the hegemony forces fell into disarray, the Alliance pressed their advantage. Ship after ship fell or surrendered, unable to match the perfectly coordinated assault. Hours later, as the last hegemony vessel retreated, Ilara slowly disconnected from the Nexus. The sudden silence in her mind was almost as overwhelming as the initial connection had been. As the dust settled, the true impact of their victory became clear. The hegemony's main fleet was in ruins, their leadership in disarray. More importantly, news of the Alliance's victory was spreading rapidly across the galaxy, inspiring other subjugated species to rise up. In the days that followed, as the Alliance began the monumental task of rebuilding and reaching out to newly liberated worlds, Ilara found a quiet moment to reflect. Humanity had come so far from that first signal received on Earth. They had faced unimaginable challenges and horrors, but they had also found strength in diversity and unity that they never knew they possessed. The galaxy was entering a new era, one of cooperation and mutual understanding fostered by the Nexus protocol. There would be challenges ahead, but for the first time in recent memory, the future looked bright. As Ilara looked out at the stars from the observation deck of the Nexus, she smiled. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as mediators, innovators, and friends. It truly had been humanity's finest hour, and the dawn of a new age for all species in the galaxy. The Nexus protocol, born from desperation and hope, had become a bridge between worlds. And Ilara knew that this was just the beginning of an even greater adventure.